I don't know about you all, but this is a very familiar story. I was raised on the story of the Good Samaritan, and I never realized as a child that calling a Samaritan good was not good. That the people who would have originally heard that text would have said, what do you mean there's a good Samaritan? Just to give you a little history background, and probably more than you really want, but sometimes it's helpful to set the context. Samaritans, if you read the Hebrew Bible very closely, the Old Testament, and you find the sections where the Israelites, some of the Israelites were sent into exile and taken away, there were some people that hung back, that were not taken into exile. And when they stayed back, they intermarried with the local folks. So they were considered to be impure all the time. Everywhere they went, there was nothing they could do to get their lives right. And that group of people, whose lives were around the town of Samaria, were called Samaritans. They were to a good Jewish boy like Jesus, nobodies. They were meant to be to folks of the faith of that time. They would have been naturally unclean. So setting the story, to even entitle the story The Good Samaritan, is to have an affront if you are listening to this story in that first century setting when Jesus talked about it. So someone stands up to test Jesus. It was something that regularly happened in a society that's built on shame and honor. You get honor if you win public discourse, and you lose honor. You become shamed if you lose. So you win, you lose. It's a win-lose situation. So a lawyer pops up, someone who really knew the Torah, and said, "Listen, Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" That's a big question. That's a big question. And what does eternal life look? Doesn't ask, what does eternal life look like? How do I live it? It's, how can I inherit it? What are the steps? I want 6 steps that I can do. This, if I can leap through these leaps, what do I need to do? What is the absolute minimum that I can get by with? And Jesus turns it back on him. Each one of the gospel stories, Jesus must have had to answer this question several times. Because each of them, sometimes Jesus gives the answer, and sometimes he turns it back on the lawyer. And this time, turns it back on the lawyer. He says, "Dude, you're a lawyer. How do you read the law?" Maybe he didn't say dude. Maybe in Aramaic he said dude. I don't know. But, how do you read the law? And so he quotes. He quotes from Deuteronomy and then Leviticus. Deuteronomy, the Shema, the very sacred text to Jewish folks. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord your God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength." And then he quotes Leviticus, the only time Jesus quotes Leviticus in his entire ministry, and it is from Leviticus 19. "And you shall love your neighbor as yourself." And, of course, we could leave it there. Isn't that a great place to leave it off? But that's not where the lawyer leaves it off. He wants to know, who is my neighbor? Now, what's interesting is, and I was, the tech team, poor tech team, the pastor's wandering around, he goes over, he starts talking to the tech team, and so I gave them a preview of the message. Probably more than they really wanted, but they were very kind. The tech team, just so you know, if you're looking for kind folks to hang out with, they're over there in the tech team. Just don't interrupt them while they're trying to do their work. But they are very kind. So I said, the Greek word, what ultimately was translated so that we get the Bible later on, the Bible's written much after Jesus said it, probably in Aramaic. The Greek word kind of means someone who is near to you. So when they think neighbor, when the question, who is my neighbor, who is near to me? He's expecting somebody to say, well, anyone within 5 feet of you, that's a neighbor. Anyone 6 feet and beyond, not a neighbor. looking for a clear delineation, a line, want to draw a line and make it clear. Wants to justify himself. That question, who is my neighbor? So Jesus then tells a story. You heard the story. It's a powerful story. It's about somebody who falls among robbers. It was dangerous. The Jericho road from Jerusalem was known to be dangerous. Why a guy wasn't traveling with a caravan and by himself, I don't know. He's not here to ask the question, what are you doing going? You know better than to go on the Jericho road, dude. But he did. Goes down the Jericho road by himself. Robbers get him, take all his stuff, leave him at the side of the road. Along comes a priest. Somebody you think is going to be religious to the max. And he was religious to the max. He knew the rules. The rules say you cannot touch a dead body or blood, or you will become impure. Can't do that. So don't go near that. So, to be absolutely sure, not only does he cross away, he walks away, goes on the far side of the road and passes by this guy who's laying there bleeding. Doesn't want to mess with it because he's got the law, he's got his boundaries. And sometimes I think this is the danger of church today. We draw some lines, we make some good rules, we decide who's on the inside, who's on the outside, who is my neighbor, the one I'm supposed to like. And everybody else can just kind of do their own thing. We're not going to worry about those folks. That is not what this text is about. This text calls the church to order and says, listen, who are you to decide who your neighbor is? Who are you to decide who your neighbor is? So, first guy keeps to the boundary. Second guy is a Levite. If you know anything about the story of the Israelites, the tribal Levites, their whole job was to work in the temple. That was their job was to maintain the religion. So he knew the law, crossed to the other side, and goes on by. Then here comes the hated guy, the guy who is not an insider, the Samaritan. The guy whose boundary is, this is a Jewish guy laying over here on the road. They don't want anything to do with me. Now, in my mind, tit for a tat, black and white, I'm ready for that. I'm like, all right, I know how to draw that line. You don't like me, I'm going to walk by on the other side too. That is not how the story goes, though. You're thinking a third guy's going to pass by. The Samaritan sees the man, he goes to the man, he has mercy, something stirs inside of him, and he goes to him, he touches him, that's anathema right there, and then he gives so that the man can be healed. He reaches beyond the boundaries. And as you all know, in first century Aramaic society, when you cross a boundary out of love, out of compassion, you make someone your kin. It's not just a friend, somebody who hangs out on the other side of the road. This is somebody you're saying is part of my future. They matter enough that interacting with them will change me, not just them. I'm making you a part of my circle. I'm touching your life. The word used here in Aramaic would have been rachma, which means neighbor, friend. And it's from the root that means womb, the place from which we give birth. It's a kinship, it's a bond, it's a blessing, it's a bridge built. Only it's not just a kind of surface level bridge. It is a bridge to the core. You are my companion on the road. You matter. And you matter so much, I'm going to take you and make sure you're cared for. Now, one of the things I hadn't noticed until this week reading the text, you know how many times preachers read the Good Samaritan? I mean, Bible studies. I don't know how many times I've preached this text, how many times I've heard preachers preach this text. There's a little twist. There's a little twist. The lawyer asks, who is my neighbor? And Jesus asks, who acted like a neighbor? Go and do likewise. Who acts like a neighbor? It's not about who your neighbor is. It's like how I pointed that. It's not about who your neighbor is. It's about how you can be a neighbor. How do I be a neighbor to the person that I would prefer to cross and pass on the other side of the road? That guy that always asked me for money who is panhandling. That guy who always kind of smells a little bit. That guy who's always going to engage me in a 5-minute conversation I don't have time for. What am I going to do? How am I going to be neighbor to them? Well, first of all, I'm going to leave 5 minutes early, so I've got some extra time for that 5-minute conversation. I'm not going to ask, what's the minimum I've got to do? I'm going to ask, how can I be neighbor? And you see, this is one of the things I already love. This is day 13 of being your pastor here. Some of the things I've already seen. I met the team coming back from ASP, Fayette County, West Virginia, doing great work. 4 teams of youth and adults went from Doolin Church and did work to transform people's lives, make them warmer, safer, and drier. Those people are not neighbors in proximity, but Doolin Church made them neighbors. Made them neighbors. And you know how they made them neighbors? By being neighbors. Renting vans, teaching people how to use power tools. You know, that's always a dangerous adventure. You know, even people who know how to do it, you can get messed up. You know, all of those pieces came together, an extra effort to be neighbor. This morning, yesterday afternoon, a group gathered right downstairs for the Ministry of Hope. And I came over to watch, but they didn't let me watch. They put me to work. I don't know what they were thinking. Kathy said, here's a bag, James, get to work. You know, and so, Sunita really said that, but I didn't want to get in trouble, so I thought Kathy would take it a little bit, you know, so we packed bags, and then this morning, people showed up here early. Not as early as the folks who were waiting for us outside, but waited. And we tried our best to be neighbor. We tried our best to be neighbor because it wasn't about them being neighbors. It was about us being neighbors to them. You see what? This Samaritan story is about you becoming the Samaritan, crossing a boundary, opening a door, making a difference. And Doolin Church is already doing that. But every one of us gets to do it in our everyday life. Wherever you work, wherever you play, wherever you go, you get to be a neighbor. It's a privilege. It's an invitation. It is Jesus saying to us, how are you going to be neighbor? Go and do it. Go and do it. So, this week, my challenge to you, and you know, the funny thing is, every time I challenge you, I'm really challenging me. Let me just tell you, I'm throwing my gauntlet down. And the gauntlet I'm throwing down is for me. It's for me. How am I going to do my best to be neighbor? Not just look and say, oh, that guy is my neighbor. Oh, that person not. No. This person, yeah. Oh, neighbor. No, not so much. How am I going to be neighbor? How am I going to love the person that I meet? I don't choose what happens in my day every day. People run into people places. But I get to choose how I interact with those people. I get to choose whether I'm going to be a neighbor to them, if I'm going to let them matter enough, if I'm going to have a smile on my face as I get to hand them a gift card like I saw Nancy do this morning, or when I hand them a bag like Sylvia did this morning, when I saw my wife stamp their hands, when Linda stamped their hands and said good morning to them, all with a smile on their face. They did everything in their power. The frontline people and the behind-the-scenes people to be neighbors. So whether you're on the front lines, and in your own life you are the front lines of your life. You're the only ones that get to be you. So be you and be neighbor. Ask yourself this week, how can I be a better neighbor? How can I let God's love, God's compassion that flows from my heart out in my workplace, play place, shopping place, retirement place, home place, school place? I don't know all the places you go. How can I be neighbor? That's what this text asks of us. Next week, I think, is Mary and Martha, but we'll wait until we get there next week. I'm going to invite the ushers to come forward at this time.